I want to retell a story, and some of it's going to sound familiar because it's an old story, but I'm sure some of it's going to surprise you. It's the story of Canada. I want to talk about what we've done and built here together, and the part I care about most is how we've done it, because the how is the key to the future. It's the key to the story that our children will tell to their children. And I'm going to make a case for a form of stubborn, persistent, pragmatic optimism. I'm going to suggest to you that cynicism and negativity about Canada isn't just wrong in its facts, and it isn't just an indulgence. If we allow it to become toxic, it poses a threat to our future. So I want to start vaccinating against it. Now, storytelling in this form is not comfortable for me. I spent 4 decades in a profession, public service, where you're trained to immediately step away from cameras and let politicians do the talking. You earn trust by being candid and direct behind closed doors and very discreet in public. I remember walking up to Parliament Hill, as I did dozens of times over the years, or into some event, drawing a glance from a lurking news photographer who, within microseconds, dismissed me as, not worth it. And I've been cropped out of the edges of a lot of pictures. So I'm pushing against decades of habit and training to step forward into this circle, but I think it's a story worth telling. So why now? Well, Canadians seem to be in a gloomy and cranky mood these days, and the polls say we're not just pessimistic, but we've lost a lot of confidence in our ability to solve problems and in our democracy. Understandably, most of the time, we're immersed in and focused in challenges of the day, problems we need to solve, the ways that we've fallen short, and that is not a bad thing. It's better to be restless and striving for better, and we Canadians should not be complacent or self-congratulatory, coast on legends and myths, appeal to return to some imagined past, be great again. I could fill half a dozen of these talks with challenges we're grappling with and big ones that are coming. It can be a daunting list, and there's a lot to talk about. And we have big decisions and big choices ahead of us. But I came to the view a long time ago that what matters is how we face those challenges, how we talk, how we learn, how we decide, and how we make decisions stick. And I'm strongly of the view that our successes in the past, our way of working through issues together, should give us confidence, resilience, and energy to face the future, whatever path we choose to take. So what do people mean by negativity becoming toxic? Feedback is a good thing. And a lot of what you hear and read every day comes from intentional feedback loops. Here in Canada, we have a broad and deep infrastructure that tells us about errors, gaps, ways in which we've fallen short of our aspirations and our rhetoric, ways that things should have been done differently. Fresh feedback comes in all the time from audits, evaluations, academic studies, reports, court cases, commissions of inquiry, dozens of institutional watchdogs. It provides a free press and democratic politics with the supply chain, so I do not want to be misunderstood here. This intentional feedback is a positive thing for our democracy. Detecting errors is the first step to correcting them. After-action reviews are the first step to learning and preventing reoccurrence. Better to know that something needs attention than not, and better for Canada to aspire to continuous learning and continuous improvement. Better for us to be restless than complacent. But my experience is that for a number of reasons, this flow of feedback can be a distorted mirror. The way we gather it increasingly filters out things that work. The stories we hear often ignore the baselines. They make things look bigger and more dramatic than they are, and they focus on outliers. The way we talk about this feedback often feeds false generalizations, and it can fuel confirmation bias, where you hear what you want to hear and see what you want to see. The way we use it can fuel finger-pointing and blame games and create ammunition for those who would divide instead of search for common understanding, common ground. If all we do with all this intentional feedback is turn it into a clever tweet, a fundraising video, quotable quote, a meme, a way of framing, blaming, damaging the other side of an argument, then over time we're all going to lose perspective on how we're really faring here. And what's worse, we could lose some of our capacity to move forward. Why? Well, my biggest problem with relentless flow of negativity is that it undermines trust. And it undermines underlying confidence that we can solve problems and get things done and shape our future. It can make us passive, jaded, defeatist. We can feel overwhelmed. And it's hard enough to sustain the commitment, energy, bloody-minded hopefulness about the future that makes positive change possible. That capacity, as Nelson Mandela said, to rise when we fall. I still contend that these are corrosive forces that, if we allow them to prevail, we condemn future generations of Canadians to stagnation. Now, when we only live in the present, it's so easy to forget the past chapters of courage, leadership, hard work that brought us here and that shape who we are. When we don't step back and look around and see how other countries and societies have fared, we can be too hard on ourselves and much too hard on each other. I spent 4 decades in a profession around public policy and politics, and a lot of things changed. But there was one constant, a background drone of dystopia and doomsaying. The historians that sift through the record left behind by the pundits, the experts, the op-ed pieces, book releases, conference panel titles, they'll think Canada spent the last 40 years on the verge of breakup, racked by division and separatism. You would think we were always falling into some abyss: stagnation, crushing debt, runaway inflation, brain drain, flagging productivity, crisis here, crisis there. And it's still a lot of what we hear. Really? Look at us and listen to Canada's story. For all the turbulence and headwinds of 2024, and they are real, we're still near the top of world rankings in most economic, social, health, and environmental indicators. There are precious few countries that we would trade in baskets and to-do lists with and be any better off. What's more impressive is that we've raced near the front of the pack in many indicators of how our growth and prosperity is shared. 2 that stand out: we're number 1 in the world in participation in post-secondary education, and we have more intergenerational mobility than any other G7 country. Now here's another simple indicator. Canada's just about the best place in the world to be born a girl. That girl has a life expectancy this year of 84, a 92% chance of living to the age of 65. And that life has paths to education, career, positions of influence, and power that so many other societies would block for her. Now, none of these accomplishments were accidents or dumb luck. We made it happen. Yes, there's a bit of luck involved in being Canada. We're blessed with great geography, an abundance of resources. We have fresh water, we have the longest ocean coastline in the world, and we're globally important producers of energy and minerals, agricultural commodities. But so are other countries, and many of them are burdened with conflict, corruption, and crushing inequality. The Canadian story is not about luck. It's about what we choose to do together, generation after generation, with our resources. The Canadian story is about doing so much together, while being open to one of the world's largest intakes of newcomers, and they, generation after generation, add their contributions. Right now, Canada is one of the top 4 destinations in the world for students. It's a top destination for skilled workers. And at any time, we have more than 2 million applications at our Immigration and Citizenship Department. Why would that be? It isn't just economics. One reason many people want to come to Canada is that our cities, like this one, are consistently near the top of global rankings for safety, livability, quality of life. And another is that they know they have a good chance of being welcomed in Canada, accepted, given opportunity to add their personal and their family stories to our communities, our society, and our culture. This diversity of sources has created a diversity of languages and cultures rarely found on this planet. And the story of Canada has been one of slowly widening circles of inclusion. Those past generations fought hard for, and they achieved gains for Francophones, for women, for newcomers, people of diverse sexual identities, persons with disabilities. That work continues. It's unfinished, and it can be hard work, and there's no room for complacency. But I think as we press forward and aspire to be better, we should pause and look back at tracks in the snow and take heart and renewed energy and commitment from how far we've come. Yes, for far too long, Canada's story has left out people who have been hidden in plain sight, our Indigenous peoples. And despite all the place names on our map, it's a story marred by racism and marginalization. But that's starting to change. Not fast enough, but steadily and surely we walk that path. Canada's been stony ground for people that would divide us. It's been decades since anyone built a successful political career here on bashing immigrants and blowing dog whistles of racism and intolerance. Now, Canadians know this is part of their story. We like to bring it out on Canada Day, and we somehow know that diversity is an important part of who we are. But in my experience, Canadians are much less familiar with another part of their own story, and it seems to have faded into our background. It's the story of the rich store of resources that we built ourselves. These resources are how we live together. It's our combination of democracy, federalism, pluralism. It's foundations we built in the rule of law, independent justice, a free press, a strong public sector. These are the truly special parts of Canada's story. Picture yourself playing with Google Earth. Pull back, way back. The 8 billion humans on that blue planet are organized into more than 200 states. And some people live without a state, or in a state that's clearly run for someone else's benefit. And tens of millions of people are displaced. Of those 200 states, only about 80 can be considered democracies, and most of those 80 haven't really reached their full potential. There are shades of autocratic governments who hold elections. But Canada is a full democracy. In the annual rankings by Freedom House, Canada gets a score of 98 out of a possible 100. Fewer than 30 of those 200 countries are federations. And it isn't a small thing to have been a successful federation for 157 years. Because federalism is not a small idea. It's a big one. Federalism is a way for people to peacefully live together, to share political space, to share risks, to share benefits, increase your impact on the world, despite differences in language, religion, race, ethnicity, and it helps balance geography. For more than a century, Canadian federalism has never been stagnant. We've added provinces, we've devolved powers to territorial governments, we've seen constant evolution in our cities, our regions, how we organize services like education, health, transportation, and we've belatedly added Indigenous governments and their agencies to the mix. We've gone through many experiments in how we live together, and we'll keep at it. We work through our issues without top-down uniformity. So, like democracy, federalism can seem noisy and messy at times, and the noise and the disagreements are sometimes seen as dysfunction. It's a rich field for those doomsayers. The discourse in Canada is often dominated by those that are unhappy about something. But I see that noise as proof of life. It takes work and effort, but our federalism allows diversification, experimentation. Many of our accomplishments were tested and proven in one part of the country and then copied in others, or taken to national scale. And in other cases, we're very comfortable in Canada that our provinces and our cities can choose very different paths. We've been through times that were much more turbulent than anything we see these days, and we found a way through. Because in Canada, we've learned a lot about dialogue, compromise, accommodation. Our values have been forged by decades of hard work, some clever governance, a timely compromise, political leadership at crucial times. When I was in government, wherever I worked over the years, I used to receive a steady stream of visitors from other countries. They came to explore what we were doing here and see if it could be applied to their challenges. What fascinated them wasn't the institutions or the mechanics. It was the underlying values of solidarity, balance with accommodation of difference. And this was always the part that they found hardest to transplant, especially in the aftermath of conflict. Quite a few visitors came to explore our public sector, where 1 in 5 Canadians work, because it's something we're good at every level. Sure, if you look, you'll find examples of excellence in other countries, New Zealand, the Nordics, Estonia, Singapore. Notice that pattern? Those are small countries. And I know that the story of Canada includes at least a chapter about a solid, professional, nonpartisan public sector that works effectively with the governments we elect and with the private and not-for-profit sectors. It has been a virtuous circle here. A vibrant private sector creates jobs, incomes, revenues that pay for services. It supports philanthropy. It provides much of the innovation in services and technology. But there wouldn't be a vibrant private sector here without a strong public sector, because it's not zero-sum. Both can win. Canada can win. We've come to take that part of the story for granted, but it's an act of will and the result of sustained hard work. And it will take sustained attention, maybe some investment to keep that part of our story going in the years ahead. So my main point today is how we go about talking and deciding matters. What matters is how we're going to sustain and pass on the resources we've created. Democracy, freedom, the rule of law, federalism, pluralism, a strong public sector. We have these resources, and we still have the software to learn from our history and our mistakes and keep working hard to make things better. We have values of solidarity and inclusion that can guide our debates and our choices. And we've not yet irrevocably split into camps of us and them. There's still a place here for civility, respect, and dialogue. We need to pause once in a while and look back at where we've come from. We need to pause once in a while and look around at the rest of the world. We Canadians face some big challenges and big choices, and these are not easy times. We should always be restless. We should always be ambitious. But we need to rise above the cynics, the curmudgeons, the defeatists, and we must reject forces of anger and division. We should be stubborn, persistent, pragmatic optimists. The story of Canada is still being written. Let's pass it on.